Right, welcome along to the RT Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here alongside Anthony Pyne of RT Sport Online. This week we're joined by former UCD, Sheffield Wednesday and Shamrock Rovers midfielder Paul Corry and former Dundalk and St Johnstone striker David McMillan. We'll be looking back at the weekend's SSE Airtricity League action and also looking ahead to a big game in the Premier League between Manchester City and Arsenal, which will be probably decisive in terms of where the title goes. But I suppose, Anthony, where we will start off is in regard to Jack Byrne, because he was in the news this week, or last week, should I say.
Yeah, he was. He was subject to a couple of bids, at least a couple of bids from Charlotte in the MLS. And I mean, it was an attractive offer. There's no doubt about it. Like the reported figure was around 400k that they offered. And I think essentially, Raf, from Shamrock Rovers' point of view, like they will be looking to make a real go at getting into the Europa League group stages. That would be worth maybe in and around €4 million to them to get there. And obviously Jack Byrne is integral to that. So for them, it's sort of simple maths. You know, we can't lose a key midfielder, or certainly they would have. I don't know if Charlotte had come back with something significantly larger than that sort of offer, maybe they might have considered it a little more. But I think really that's what it came down to. And I think Jack Byrne understands that. Like, he's out of contract at the end of the current League of Ireland season. He could go in the winter. I mean, I think that could happen. He's a past relationship with the head coach, the Charlotte head coach. I think he played under him at Manchester City, didn't he, the academy? So there's a relationship there. You know, we know that Jack is a player who is, like, he's travelled around. He's played in different countries. He was in Cyprus before he came back to Rovers. He's played in the Netherlands. The chance to play, I think the stadium, the Bank of America Stadium that they play in is incredible. It's a fantastic arena. I think it's the home to the NFL team, isn't it, as well? The Carolina Panthers. Great league. You know, just a change, a different style, a different lifestyle. He's not quite 27, Jack. Like, he's still a young man. You know, he's still in his prime, and he's playing really well again. I think by his own admission, it was a disappointing season by his standards last year. But we're sort of seeing the old Jack Byrne this year. He's been excellent for Shamrock Rovers. Even throughout their tricky start, he was playing well. So I think that's really it in a nutshell. You know, it's just one of those things where Rovers have gone, look, you're too valuable to us. We just can't let you go. You know, for that, it's just not. What's the point? You know, we have aspirations of really having a go at Europe. He's going to be a big part of that. And that's it for now. And I don't think there's any sulking or anything from Jack Byrne's point of view. I think it is what it is. But it may not be the last we hear. But I think maybe come the winter, it might resurface.
Yeah, for sure, because there has been interest before. Now, in terms of the story, David Sneyd broke it last week, and that was in the 42.ie. And then subsequently, ahead of the weekend's matches, Stephen Bradley said of the Charlotte FC offer, it was brilliant, an incredible offer, the MLS, but you have to respect that Jack has a contract with this club, and this club as a board make decisions, and they made a decision understanding how important Jack is for us. Now, myself and Connor Neville were talking to Jack on this podcast back in December 2021, and the Charlotte FC interest did come up at the time, as Jack sort of broached it. And as you said, it was in regard to a coach that he'd worked with at Manchester City, who is the head coach there, and it's Christian Latancio. So we're just going to play this clip here, which is Jack Byrne talking to myself and Connor back in late 2021, before we get the thoughts of the lads. Much behind, you know, before the Rovers move was confirmed, there was talk about Charlotte FC and the MLS. It was just in the papers at the time, and I think it was especially Christian Latanzio, the coach I think he would have worked with at City, was there. Was there any discussion there, or was that just paper talk, as one would describe it?
No, it was like, I know Christian. I'd be in contact with Christian loads, like, you know, since I left Man City. So he's a good friend, and you know, he's obviously working over there, and they're a new franchise, and they've just been set up. So look, maybe the timing wasn't great on that one, and you know, who knows, someday maybe it'll come around again. And but you know, he's always been a great help to me in my career, and himself and Patrick were obviously me manager for, you know, a big part of my development and a big push behind me going to Holland that time. So, you know, he knows the type of player I am. He knows, you know, the environment that I would do well in. Very complimentary to Stephen, the way Stephen's teams play. Stephen Bradley. So it's a conversation that could come up again, maybe in the future. But I hope he does well out there. And obviously, he had a couple of offers. I'm not going to say which, but I think just at this moment in time, I see myself just playing here. I love the club. I love Shamrock Rovers. I love the coaching staff there. I love the players when I was there. I love the feeling I got when I was there. So I just want a bit more of that back and try and kick on.
Okay, so that was Jack Byrne on this podcast in December of 2021. And as he noted, that interest from Charlotte FC was something that might come up in the future. It now has, but three bids rejected now, and the transfer window in the MLS closes today. But Paul, in regards to what Shamrock Rovers have to weigh up, and I think Anthony touched on it there in terms of they have their ambitions this season of trying to get into the European group stages once again, and also Jack Byrne's importance to that, but then you kind of balance that out with whatever money you can get back if he were to leave or if a bid were to be accepted. There was a fair bit to weigh up there, but it's clear that for Shamrock Rovers that Byrne is an important cog to their midfield.
Yeah, listen, I'm sure they weighed it up, Raf, and I'm sure there was conversations about what was going to be best for the club, because I mean, in Europe you can have a couple of bad draws and you can find yourselves out of competitions quite quickly, and the pot of money that they got last year might not be available to them this year. And on the flip side, you have, I guess, a guaranteed value on Jack's transfer fee if he was to move. So I'm sure it wasn't an easy one. Typically, Shamrock Rovers have held out for the correct valuation of their players, and they just probably didn't feel as if they were seeing that with Jack this time round. And like Anthony has mentioned previously, he is absolutely pivotal, particularly in Europe. If you think about those games and you really need somebody to be able to hang on to the ball and just kill a bit of pressure or create a moment of magic, and Jack is absolutely that for Shamrock Rovers. I think we've seen glimpses of him getting back towards what we saw before he moved to Cyprus. Last year was obviously hampered with injuries, and you would just hope that he stays injury free, that he kicks on and he kind of gets back towards those levels, because the age profile of Jack, he should be coming in towards the sort of prime of his career now over the next 3-4 years. And it would be great if he could stay at Shamrock Rovers, but if he stays injury free and that head coach is still there come the end of the season, I mean, Jack is in a fantastic position with regards to where he wants to take his career. Shamrock Rovers have been brilliant to him and helping him rebuild and get back to really high levels, but there is a feeling that with 6 months left on his contract, if he is to kind of kick on again and find those levels, it's very hard to see how he's going to be staying in this league.
Yeah, and David, I suppose for yourself, I guess you had this experience towards the end of 2017 when you signed for St. Johnstone from Dundalk, and like, what kind of things would you have been weighing up at the time in terms of, is this the right move and the right time?
Yeah, I suppose it's seen as, for me personally, it was sort of a last opportunity at the age that I was at. But for Jack, it's interesting because obviously he's had to move to Cyprus and it probably hasn't worked out as well as he would have liked. But I think he's spoken previously about how happy he is when he's at home, you know, around family and playing for Shamrock Rovers. So it's interesting that, you know, he was obviously willing to accept the club. We're going to turn this offer down, and he was going to stay till November. And doesn't appear that he put any push on Shamrock Rovers to let him go. So I think he's been very respectful to Rovers, and Rovers have obviously made their own decision in terms of this is the right one for them and trying to get through rounds in Europe, as you spoke about. And yeah, it seems that Rovers are taking a little bit of a risk there, but probably the right decision, I think, considering the money that they've made in terms of other transfers that they've done, and obviously their European run last year, that they don't feel in a position that they have to sell.
Yeah, and Shamrock Rovers are going to be our next live match on RT, but it's next Monday and it's away at Derry City, so that is a 7:15 p.m. start on that one. But that, yeah, as I said, next Monday. This Friday just passed anyway. There were quite a few interesting results in the Premier Division, which saw Derry City winning 3-1 at Cork City, Colin Whelan and Michael Duffy getting a couple of those goals in the second half. And then Bohemians at the top still beating Drogheda United 2-0 away from home. Shells and Dundalk, which was the live TV game. And of course, David, watched you on the punditry, of course, as well. It was 1-1. Quite a lot happened. We'll probably start on that. St. Pat's then were defeated 2-0 at home to Shamrock Rovers at Richmond Park. And then on Saturday, Sligo Rovers saw off UCD 3-1. Max Mata scoring again in that. And that's 8th for the season now. But let's start on Shells and Dundalk's 1-1 draw. And let's listen to the Shelburne goalkeeper, Conor Cairns, who was player of the match.
Yes, and Conor Cairns of Shelburne is the SSE Airtricity Player of the Match. Leanne Shield is the marketing manager of SSE Airtricity, here to give you your award.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And congratulations indeed, because what a game you had, Conor. I mean, the penalty save is obviously one, but I think the save just before half-time, when you know, kept you in the game and made it a different half-time team talk.
Yeah, it's just one of them. I think the penalty is what it is. I played with Robbie before, so I kind of sort of know him, try to psych him out, and sometimes you save them, sometimes you don't. Again, before half-time, it's just a case of the old cliche of working hard and getting back up off the ground as quick as you can, and paid off anyway, got us in, level at the break, and to be honest, I think we were unfortunate not to get the 3 points in the end, but a point with 10 men for that long it's a decent result.
And the one at the end then, Ryan Tulloch, who unfortunately beat you once from your point of view, but then to save from him and saving you a point.
Yeah, again, it's just that thing we work on all the time. Skins, the goalkeeper coach here, and Scotty, our backup keeper here, is two of them push each other so hard, working to get across the goal as fast as I can, and thankfully today I was able to keep it out. I think Rayhan has a couple against me already this season, so I didn't want him getting another one.
All right, that is Conor Cairns, the Shelburne goalkeeper. And Dave McMillan, as I said, you were on the TV coverage on Friday night, and you're probably half of what you had to talk about involved refereeing decisions. So we might just review some of what went on. So just want to get your thoughts on the two penalty incidents. So the one for Shells in the second half, but also the one for Dundalk towards the start of the game, which later led on to the knock-on effect of Shane Farrell's red card. And then also the disallowed goal for Shelburne, which involved Nathan Shepherd. Well, he was clutching his face afterwards. Whether Paddy Barrett touched him or not in that particular area, that was not clear on the video. But just your thoughts on the refereeing decisions overall in that match.
Yeah, it was definitely a lively first half. First time doing punditry, I was a bit worried for Shells and Dundalk might finish 0-0, but within 10 or 15 minutes there was enough drama to fill 90 minutes. But yeah, Tulloch had done brilliantly for the first penalty. You know, skipped by Andy Quinn, and Andy just dangled a leg. From my view, I actually thought he might have got a nick on the ball. Really hard to actually see on the video whether he did or not, and certainly can't blame the referee. You know, he's tripped Tulloch, and he's got a touch of the ball on the not, or touch of the ball or not. He's made Damien McGrath make a decision, and you know, it's a penalty. And I think Duff alluded to it in his interview after. It's just stupidity really from Shane Farrell to throw a hand at Keith Ward, and you know, right in front of the referee as well. So he has no, he can only make one decision, and it's a red card for Farrell. And so yeah, I thought the penalty was, yeah, look, you can't blame the referee for giving it, whether Andy Quinn got a slight nick on the ball or not. It was clumsy. And yeah, the other penalty then for I think it was Evan Caffrey, and Tulloch gave it away this time. I think Caffrey's just trying to be clever, you know, put his body into it. And again, I probably don't think it's a penalty, but as soon as you go touch tight like that, you give the referee a decision to make, and it's probably a bit naive from Tulloch to even go near Caffrey in the box. Just let him go. He's not in a dangerous position. He's kind of coming away from goal. So two penalties that were touch and go, but ultimately you can't blame the referee for giving either of them. Obviously Benson's brilliantly saved by Conor Cairns, a really strong arm. You know, he doesn't go down too early. He's wary Robbie might go down the middle. He doesn't want to commit himself too much, and a really strong arm to make the save. The Paddy Barrett one then was, yeah, look, I said I thought it was a free out just purely because Shepherd had two hands on the ball, I think just about before Paddy Barrett makes contact with him. So I think, again, Damien McGrath makes the right decision there. I know Shepherd goes down holding his head. I did question that after the game, but a few Dundalk players and staff, I think he actually said he got a bit of mud in his eye. So I don't think it was necessary play acting, but certainly Paddy didn't make contact with his head, and he'll feel aggrieved. You know, as a striker, I'd have felt aggrieved if it was given against me if I didn't get the goal. But I think, in fairness to the referee, I think it's probably just about the right call.
Yeah, and Paul, I suppose one of the aspects in terms of Shelburne is their work in transition, and it was evident against Shamrock Rovers the week before, and again against Dundalk, just how lethal they are on the break, especially where Jack Moylan and Matty Smith sort of combine. And I think for people who maybe know Damien Duff's history and having played for Jose Mourinho's Chelsea during a time where Jose really valued attacking transition, there's an element of it in their style of play, at least visible in the last couple of weeks?
There certainly is. I mean, to go that long with 10 men requires a hell of a lot of concentration, discipline, and organization. And they showed probably all of those three traits over the course of that kind of period of time when they had a man less. And I thought they were superb, Raf. I really did. I thought particularly Jack Moylan in the last number of weeks and since the start of the season, his game has gone up a level. He always has had that kind of rare ability to receive the ball and take people on. But I think his decision making is getting better as weeks go by. He's well capable of holding the ball up, turning and taking the game to an opposition. We saw that against Shamrock Rovers. He was brilliant for Matty Smith's goal. And I thought he was brilliant the other night against Dundalk again. I guess the one thing that you would like to see Jack continue is scoring goals and creating goals. And if he can do that, I mean, he's going to be one hell of a player. He's still very young. And to lead the line like that, in a team that tends to play with a bit of a low block, it's not an easy job. Dave will be able to tell you that, but he does it extremely, extremely well. He's vitally important. I think we mentioned last time I was on, like the fact that they haven't got Sean Boyd as well. He's very much filling those boots. And if they can get Sean back fit, himself and Jack Moylan be a really good combination, particularly if you can play somebody like Matty Smith out wide as well. But for Shells, I'm sure they'll be disappointed that they didn't hang on. But to go that period of time against a team like Dundalk, and some of the players and quality that they have, I mean, they'll be absolutely delighted with the performance. And if they can continue to progress the likes of Moylan and Keeley, Shells will be okay, Raf.
Just to add to that as well, like the Derry game where they lost to Tolka 1-0 against Derry, they went down to 10 men. Barrett got sent off early in the second half, and they were excellent with 10 men that night. You know, they're one of these teams that are kind of well equipped to play with a man less because of the way Damien Duff has them set up. And as Paul and David said, they were excellent. Now, you could look at Dundalk and sort of say there was large chunks of the game where you couldn't tell they had a man less, you know, which is, you know, compliment obviously to Shelbourne, but you'd be looking at Dundalk saying they should have done more. Tulloch, they seem quite reliant on Tulloch to pull a rabbit out of the hat a lot of the time. But yeah, fair play to Shelbourne. It's not the first time they said this season where they go down to 10 men and they don't really miss a beat. You know, they're very well drilled. They know what they're doing, and they were unlucky not to take the win. They were unlucky not to hold on.
Yeah, and just on that, David, just in regards to, as Anthony said there, I mean, Tulloch did pull a rabbit out of the hat in the end to rescue a point, and Dundalk, there were a lot of goal mouth scrambles, and maybe they might have got a bit luckier at certain instances, but it's still, the form is, they're still stuttering a little bit. So what do you make of where they're at right now? And I suppose with the added effect of injuries, which would have seen Robbie Benson starting at left back as well.
Yeah, the injuries are obviously a big talking point for them, but they still, the way the game went, they actually started the game really brightly, even 11-11, created a couple of opportunities, and then when you're against 10 men for 80 minutes, there's no doubt you have to go on and win the game, and they'll be hugely disappointed. I think Shells, in fairness, probably over the course of the game, they deserved at least one goal. They created more than enough opportunities on the break. You know, Paul's mentioned how good Moylan was. You know, Matty Smith was a live wire, probably should have scored one or two. For Dundalk, just frustration. Look, I looked back at the stats. I think they had nearly 80% of the ball. They did dominate in that sense, but it was scrappy chances. It was nothing really, really clear cut. I think Robbie Benson hit the post and Tulloch followed up and just narrowly put it wide, but they weren't peppering Conor Carnes either, you know, and I think that'll be the frustration for them. They're just probably not scoring enough goals at the moment. And yeah, to have played 80 minutes against 10 men and not come away with 3 points, particularly on the run that they've been on with that opportunity, they'll be really disappointed.
Yeah, and obviously with a loud derby coming up now, you've played against Drogheda United both home and away, so I suppose you know what that fixture means, I suppose, to both clubs, but also just how difficult these derby fixtures are like. So it's a tricky one for them, especially even though Drogheda United have hit a little bit of a speed bump in the last couple of weeks and maybe dropped a few points, but they're one of those teams that are awkward for opponents.
Yeah, I think Dundalk obviously won there in Drogheda earlier in the season, but probably were lucky that night to get 3 points. You know, Drogheda were very, very good. And again, I think reports that Drogheda were very, very unlucky against Bohemians. It was very strong second half, created a number of opportunities, and just, again, probably just lacking goals or lacking a front man who's just chipping away with goals. And yeah, Louth derby, it's not going to be an easy night for Dundalk. Still a lot of players out. I'm not sure they'll have anyone return. Maybe Pat Hoban will be in the starting 11 this time around. But other than that, I'm not sure they'll have many others back. So they'll still be down numbers, and they've just got to try and get themselves going again. They just need to pull a win from somewhere to kind of stop the rot. And I think, this league is still so tight. If anybody goes with 3 or 4 wins on the bounce, you'll fly back up the table. So they're by no means, dead and buried at this early stage. There's still a lot of games to play, but a couple of wins would really make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think that would make a difference for Cork City as well, Paul. I mean, they've just kind of they've sort of hit the skids a little bit in terms of, like, they're in a little bit of a rut now, and it's a slight run of defeats, and they just find themselves a bit off the pace of some of those sides above, including Drogheda.
Yeah, I think the difference, Raf, between Cork at the beginning of the season when they played Bows and their performance over the last couple of weeks, you can see the difference and you can see the progression in their play. I think they looked very kind of raw and almost a bit naive in some of the passages of play when they played Bows that night, but I think they've come on a hell of a lot. I mean, you only have to look at the result at home against Dundalk, and if you look back on the clips from the other night, they had chances against Derry. I mean, Brian Myers had to pull off 2 or 3 really good saves. I think one was from Keating, another one was Coffey. And you just feel that when you're playing a team with Derry's quality, you're probably not going to get a huge amount of chances. And when they do come your way, you really do need to take them. And bar, a goal to bring them back into the game, you felt like they might have been able to cling on to Derry. But I'm not sure Colin Healy would be too worried. I think if they produce performances like they did the other night, I think they'll be okay. The results against the likes of Derry and Shamrock Rovers are probably not going to be the ones that will keep them in the division. It will be certainly the results against UCD and Drogheda in particular. I mean, the draw against UCD will certainly have frustrated them. The defeat against UCD would have frustrated Colin Healy. And they're certainly kind of games that you'd like to see them do a little better in. But I can see the progression in their play. They're a young squad. You can expect a bit of inconsistency. But hanging on to the likes of Drogheda is going to be vitally important. I said it the last time on, they'll be looking at their results every Friday night and seeing how close they are to Drogheda to try steer clear of that playoff place. But I think this squad as a whole, I think they've done well, Raf. I think it was always going to be a slow start, and I think they'll grow into the season.
Yeah, and David, on the other side of that result, of course, Derry City winning 3-1 at Turner's Cross. But I think the significant thing is the return from injury of the likes of Michael Duffy. That's only his second game of the season now. He would have played in the President's Cup, but has been out with a calf injury since then. And then also Colin Whelan as well, who came on as a sub, and for what is actually his belated Derry City debut, and he scores as well. So it's now, granted, this was a result that came away from home where they've generally been good, but it's at least a positive sign for them heading into this weekend where there's a couple of games, including Shamrock Rovers next Monday.
Yeah, I think I covered the game against Dundalk last week. It was 2-2 draw, and Derry were very good for most parts of that game, and I know Higgins was very disappointed not to come away with the win on that night, and I think it was important for them to obviously go and win in Turner's Cross. Again, they've been on a run of a bit of a winless run. So, but with Duffy back, Colin Whelan coming on, did really well in the build-up for his goal, slipping Ryan Graydon through, and then when the rebound came to him, finished it like a man who's been banging in goals for the last year, not someone who's been on a physio bed. So great to see him back. And I think that front three, the potential of that front three of Duffy, Whelan, Graydon, that's a really exciting one. And I'm sure Higgins will be praying he can get those 3 out on the pitch together without any more injuries. Again, they've been hit quite badly by injuries. So it was a big win just to get, again, to kind of stop the rot they've been on. They've allowed Shamrock Rovers to get closer to them over the last kind of month or so with the poor run of results, and they'll be trying to now kick on again with lads coming back. Obviously still Mark Connolly, Cameron Dummigan to come back into it, and they're starting to look stronger and stronger with a real good squad there.
Yeah, and Paul, on the other side of it, at the top of the table, Bohemians still 5 points clear, and it was a good win at Drogheda in terms of picking up a result in a place that is quite difficult to go to, and against a team that is, as I said earlier, awkward to play against. But I guess for them now, it's to carry that form into their home games. And I mean, they had a couple of iffy results at Dalymount Park the last couple of weeks, which had been sort of mitigated by the fact that they were still doing quite well away from home.
Yeah, I was at the game against Pats, and they were probably a little off their levels that night. the sending off obviously didn't help, but I even thought in the first kind of 30 minutes they were a little off their usual self, and I'm sure they were absolutely delighted to go to Drogheda and win, because we've seen other teams go there and struggle. And I'm sure that irrespective of what the performance was going to be like, I'm sure Declan Devine was just praying that they go there and get 3 points. I thought the goal in particular, I thought Connolly and Clark have linked up quite well, even to just create the first opening. And then Paddy Kirk has done well to get it on his weaker side, and he's finished off quite well. But they did well. I'm sure Declan Devine will be absolutely delighted with the clean sheet. I'm still not entirely sure about the back four. It's obviously a bit of a new pairing between the two centre halves, Radkowski and Novak, and I think there's probably at times where you might still have a couple of question marks over the two of them. Now it's still early and they've done well thus far, but there's been times, particularly I think when they went up against Rory Gaffney, where you saw maybe slight question marks over the two of them. But James Talbot, to be fair to him, dealt really well with anything that came in. Drogheda really pushed between Markey and Dale Rooney. Created a couple of chances. Was obviously that Ryan Brennan one where you would expect Ryan, with his experience, maybe just take a little touch and test the keeper a little more. But Bows did well, stayed in the game, and it was a bad mistake from Colin McCabe for the second goal. But I'm sure Declan Devine won't care, and Bows will be absolutely delighted with that result. And I think what we've seen in recent weeks is that Bows have a bit of strength and depth there. I think James Clark has done really well since he's come in. He was excellent against St. Pat's when he came on, when they were down to 10 men. I thought he was brilliant towards the tail end of last season as well. He was good against Drogheda the other night. So they've got a couple of options there in the final third. The two centre halves, I'd be interested to see how that kind of progresses over the season, whether or not they've got enough protection there. But if Bows can continue, Raf, to beat, say, the teams in the lower half of the division, keep a nice little gap between themselves, Derry and Shamrock Rovers. And I mean, Bows fans could not have wished for a better first round of fixtures.
So after that, Paul, like it's an obvious thing to say, but they haven't had two bad results in a row. I don't think. Like they lost to Shamrock Rovers, and then they went up and they bet Derry. They lost to St. Pat's. They went to Drogheda, which is a hard place to go. Like Drogheda have been good this year. I think their points total probably doesn't reflect how good they've been. They've been every single game. They're in it, they're really in the game. McCabe has had a couple of, unfortunately, cost the errors that's killed them. And as David alluded to earlier, they're lacking someone up top, just someone to chip away with goals. Like they're often in games and on top and they end up losing, or they're coming away thinking they should have won. But like that's one of them where Bowles didn't really play great down there at Weavers Park. But you're coming out, Declan Devine, I think, said it after the match, it's an ugly win, nothing wrong with that, we'll take that. And it's just that thing of, it just bodes well for the rest of the season. Like in terms of sustaining a title challenge, I'm not sure. But if you're looking at the top three finish, getting into Europe, like it definitely bodes well, because it's sometimes you get bad, like they lost in the derby against Shamrock Rovers, that can burst the bubble. There was all this momentum and hype around them, but it didn't. They bounced back. And they did the same again on Friday night. So it just bodes well for them, to keep it going this year and have a strong year. A top three finish for Bowles this year is, I think any Bowles fan would have taken that at the start of the season.
Yeah, certainly, David. I mean, when we came into it, and when you're looking at last season and then the continuous turnover at Dalymount Park, I mean, where they are now, it's pretty miraculous in a way.
Yeah, even that. Back to the first game where they beat Cork and Decky Devine's interview afterwards, and he knew how important that good start was, and you could see his passion, you could see how determined he is to do well with Bohemians, and I think that drive that he has is he's kind of his team are showing that, if you like. Well, I think they've got a good squad there now. Paul alludes to, I think James Clark has done very, very well. I'm surprised he hasn't actually featured more in the early parts of the season, but again, that probably just shows how well Ali Coote's done in the 10, and other good options. Obviously, Flores was missing the other night. Adam McDonald, Buckley, James McManus doing very well. Like they've really good options in midfield. So yeah, I've seen them a couple of times. I don't think they've set the world alight even, but they're just getting some really, really good results. Winning away in Sligo, winning away again in Drogheda, winning away in Derry. Like they've picked up some really, really good results, and obviously Decky Devine will be hoping that can continue. I listened to Gary Cronin's interview afterwards. He said, look, we weren't good in the second half. He wasn't too happy about it, but in the end didn't care. 3 points was all that really mattered on the night.
Yeah, and Paul, for Shamrock Rovers, then they're within 6 points of Bohs at the moment after winning at Pats. In terms of the winning and losing of this game, what made the difference? I mean, St. Pat's had been in quite good form over the last few weeks, and Shamrock Rovers obviously had been dented with a draw against Shelburne the previous week. So, what made the difference this time around?
I think they're starting to take a bit better, Shamrock Rovers. I know there's been a quiet confidence amongst the squad and management that performances have been good, and maybe results haven't matched that. But I think this was a case whereby they put the performance and the result together on Friday night. I thought they were really good. Raf, I liked that sort of box setup that they played with the other night, where they had Gary O'Neill, they had Pyne, and then they played Burke and Jack Byrne. I think at times when Dylan Watts plays in there, it can become a bit too crowded in the final third. Burke, Byrne and Watts can be very similar, and it maybe kind of eats up space for one another and maybe just crowds that final third and maybe doesn't become as fluid. I think when you play with two sitters, whether it be Pyne or Tell along with Gary O'Neill, I think it bodes really well and it leaves nice spaces. And if you look to the first goal, there is maybe a bit of space. It's a transition of play whereby Lee Grace picks up the ball. Johnny Kenny peels off like a real good number 9, finds him in that pocket, and he finishes well. And if you can start to maybe pair those combinations, they've got so much quality in the final third that they're going to create chances. And I think they've been really good in the last couple of weeks, Raf. I think if you look at the new players that they've brought in, even the likes of Trevor Clark and Johnny Kenny, they're starting to find their feet. And once they find their feet, you would have managed that they will kick on from there. The second goal, you can't really do much about. You could maybe claim that Jay McMillan should have taken Trevor Clark down, but it's just a moment of magic and a superb strike from Trevor to put them 2-0 up. And once they went 2 ahead, I don't think Pats were ever going to catch them. I think kind of the last real positive for Shamrock Rovers and somebody who's really key to their back three is Pico Lopez. He played the other night. Probably no coincidence that he played and they kept a clean sheet. And he is absolutely fundamental to how they play, just with regards to his leadership, his organisation of the other 2 centre halves and the 2 wing backs. He seems to do that best out of the lot of them. And to have him back in there to keep a clean sheet, I'm sure Stephen Bradley will be absolutely delighted. They're going into some tough games. They have to use the squad, but they certainly have the options there, and they've got the quality all across the pitch to swap players in and out.
Yeah, and in regards to Johnny Kenny, David, I mean, as a striker, when you look at him, and obviously he has an adaptation process to come into a Shamrock Rovers team that probably played a system he's not particularly used to. What have you made of how he's slotted in so far? Obviously, great technique for the goal he scored on Friday night.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, they've had Gaffney and Green there for a couple of years, both probably strikers who are more inclined to come towards the ball, very good with their back to goal, good at linking it up. Johnny Kenny's probably a different type of player, more wants to stretch teams, get in behind. I saw him obviously up in Oriel a couple of weeks ago, and he did exactly that. He tests the back four. It's not, for a defender, if the play is always in front of you, I think you're pretty happy, but Johnny Kenny's always stretching you in behind and making you think and making you run backwards, which is a kind of a defender's nightmare. And his goal the other night probably epitomised that. It's a good ball from Lee Grace. Pats are probably caught a little bit too high up the pitch. Anto Breslin's trying to get forward, thinking Pats are on the break. All of a sudden, Johnny Kenny's in behind, and he does well. Just another striker might take a touch backwards there. He lets it come across him and fires it in from the edge of the box. A really, really good finish. And on the night, he probably could have had a couple of more. One brilliant save from Dean Linus just to keep him out, and he had another one he just hooked wide. So I think he'll get a lot of goals, but it's interesting to see. He's going to have to adapt his game a little bit, because when he played with Sligo, probably less of the ball than Shamrock Rovers will have. So you can be frustrated as a number 9 if your team has a lot of the ball and you can't find gaps if defences are sitting in tight against you. So it'd be interesting to see how he develops. I think as a young man, he's going to have to kind of improve his build-up play as much as he's so good going in behind. But that's something that will probably stand to him in the long term over his career, because there's no doubt he'll get goals and he can create opportunities for himself. But it's to keep improving as a player as such a young man.
Yeah, and Max Mata, in terms of getting goals, he's still ticking away with Sligo Rovers at the moment, David. I mean, that's up 8 for the season so far, has probably made the biggest difference for them, and what I think, as we've spoken about previously, has been an inconsistent enough start to the season. In terms of his attacking characteristics and what he's brought to the party this season, in comparison to his role for them last season, what is it that sort of gives him a bit of an edge within that team?
I think he impressed me last season, even although he was in and out a little bit. Obviously, Aidan Keena was the one who'd, couldn't stop scoring, and that meant Mata's opportunities were probably often limited. But this year, he's just been a steady presence. He's a big kind of target man player, and even his goal the other night, he looks like he's a foot above everybody else, heading it into the back of the net. And again, he was a threat throughout tonight. Probably could have and should have had one or two more. So, look, he's 8 goals in 11 games, I think it is. That's an incredible start to the season, and he's already over the number of goals he got last year. He's obviously just recently been capped for New Zealand, so things are going very, very well for him. He seems very settled in Sligo. So a lot of people would have talked obviously about Keena leaving and what a big blow that was to Sligo, but there's no doubt that Matt is filling that void, and he's done brilliantly.
Yeah, and speaking of goals as well, Ronan Coughlin for Waterford made the difference against that lone town. Waterford winning 4-3 to continue their recent resurgence, and Coughlin getting all 4 goals for them. Cove Ramblers and Treaty United drew 1-1, and Finn Harps starting to pick up a few points now in the first division, and it's a 1-0 win away to Wexford. And Galway United completely unstoppable at the moment now, still like winning every single game. 4-1 win at Kerry, and then on Saturday night, Longford and Bray Wanderers drew 1-1. But Paul, in terms of the first division picture, not much changes really there. I mean, Galway still racing clear of Waterford, and then sort of the mix at the bottom, in the sort of bottom half at Longford Town, seem to have struggled to really get going, and same with Treaty United.
Yeah, you can nearly split that division into 3, can't you? It's really a 2-horse race now between Galway and Waterford, and the sprint has already begun, and I'm sure the results between one another are gonna be pivotal for both of their kind of seasons and how it pans out. I mean, Keith Long has done a great job since he's gone in there. I'm sure they weren't too pleased with the result the other night, given how they kind of started the game, maybe how they finished it. But there is, I'm sure, confidence amongst that squad that if they can kind of continue on current form, that they can catch Galway if the results against one another can be good. And then you've kind of got that chasing pack, Raf, for those playoff places. And then you've kind of got the bottom 3 between Longford, Treaty and Kerry, which it seems like it's going to be a bit of a slog this season for them. But I guess naturally enough, you kind of get drawn towards the top of the league, and it'll be really interesting to see how those two fight it out.
Yeah, and in the Women's Premier Division, Athlone Town beat Cork City 2-0, Shamrock Rovers beat Bohemians 4-0, and Peamount defeated Wexford 2-1 with Karen Duggan scoring the winner there. Treaty United and DLR Waves drew 0-0, and Galway United beat Sligo Rovers 2-1. Anthony, in regards to the Women's Premier Division now, and when we're thinking about the international picture as well, obviously you were covering the 2 games against the USA, where there were defeats, but creditable enough performances in both. I think it's interesting enough, Savannah McCarthy's now been back for Shamrock Rovers for the last couple of weeks, and she would have been a fixture within the Ireland team last year up until she suffered her ACL injury. And I mean, there's a clutch of players that are playing in the Premier Division, Women's Premier Division, who would be hopeful of getting into the World Cup squad. But I imagine Savannah McCarthy, if she can hit the ground running now, she's a good chance of being among that contingent.
I don't know. I'm not so sure, Raf, to be honest. Mainly because of the emergence of Aoife Mannion. She looks like she's going to start against Australia and Sydney now. At the moment, she started the last 3 Ireland matches, and the first USA match and against China. But I think the sense is that she's already done enough to get into that back line. I think it'd be very difficult for Savannah at this stage. After being out for over a year, it is a big ask for her. And I think she probably realises that. You never know. Niamh Fahey is also only coming back from injury at Liverpool as well, so that that there could possibly be an opening there. But it's a 23-player squad, and 3 of them are going to be goalkeepers, so it's extremely competitive. But there are other players like Tara O'Hanlon at Peamount has been excellent, a young player at Peamount United, and she made her debut against the USA in the second match in St. Louis. Obviously, you know, the likes of Anya O'Gorman. There's a couple, but it's really difficult for anybody like Savannah, who's been out for so long. At this point, it's a really big ask. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, the train never stops. But you know the title race itself, I think I always talk about like the last couple of years in the women's Premier Division. It's so tight and competitive. Like it's gone to the wire. It's got to the last game, the last 2 years, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened again. And one of the things that's happened is the introduction of Shamrock Rovers has really galvanized the whole league, because they kind of come in and ruffled feathers, and that they picked off some of the best players around the division. I thought they might need a couple of months to fully gel. Doesn't look like it. You know, they've got a really good coach in Collie O'Neill. And in fairness, like, it's not like they brought in foreign recruits. They brought in experienced players from the league who know the league, like Anya O'Gorman and Stephanie Roach and Jess Gargan and some excellent footballers. But Peamount are one of the clubs who've responded to it very positively, and they currently are top of the table. Karen Duggan has been excellent for them. Tara O'Hanlon, who I referenced, Clive Doyle, they've been really good. So there's an interesting few months coming up in that division. I would bet on it going right down to the wire again, because there's Athlone Town had a slow start, but they're starting to come back.
Galway
are going well. So it's good. It's an entertaining title race always. And you know, Shamrock Rovers just add another dimension to that, but they've been excellent, and it's kind of ominous that they've started so well, because you think they're only going to get better, you know, as they gel more, and Collie sort of really whips them into shape over the next few months, but we'll see.
Yeah, and before we turn our attentions to Manchester City against Arsenal, which is happening on Wednesday night, it was also notable while the Manchester United Brighton penalty shootout was taking place, the FAI Intermediate Cup final also was taking place at the showgrounds in Sligo. 1-1 draw during the game, but I happened to watch the stream of the penalty shootout afterwards. It was fairly dramatic. It looked like, and it was between Cockhill Celtic and Rockmount, which of course the latter of which produced Roy Keane, and in the end Rockmount retained the trophy, but it looked like Cockhill had it, and then there were a couple of penalty misses that turned it around, so dramatic enough there. But in regards to Manchester City and Arsenal, a few weeks ago heading into this, Paul, it seemed like Arsenal were picking up good momentum, but then the draw at Anfield seems to have stalled that, albeit you could regard it as a good point, but then to follow it up with giving up a 2-goal lead at West Ham, and then what happened on Friday night against Southampton, it's fairly disastrous for them, and probably leaves them with a must win essentially on Wednesday.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way, that they're going to have to go to Man City and win, not only for the table, Raf, but just to kind of rebuild sort of confidence within the camp. I mean, I think it's fair enough to say that the wheels have fallen off since the result against Liverpool, having been in such a commanding position to then throw that lead away, and to do similarly again against West Ham. You would have expected that they would have gone into Friday night against the team bottom of the table with a bit of confidence, put them to the sword, get your 7-point lead back intact over Man City, and go into Wednesday night and just don't lose the game. But I mean, the approach was just off from the get-go. The mistake from Ramsdale is just unforgivable. And then you're seeing uncharacteristic errors from members of that squad that have just been superbly consistent all throughout the season, and they gave themselves too much to do. I mean, the obvious sort of weakness in the squad is to look at the lack of strength and depth that they have in the back four. My concern was always going to be whether it would be Thomas Partey or Saliba or Gabriel. If one of them was to get injured, that it would hamper them at some point during the season. And that seems to be the case. And it's not fair to put all of that on Rob Holding, because he's doing his best, but there is a noticeable drop off between himself and Saliba, and the mistakes against Liverpool, there was mistakes against West Ham, and even the other night I thought there was mistakes. If you look at the third goal, he hasn't gone and attacked the ball, and it's a flick on, and it's an easy kind of tap in from there, and they're just conceding way too many goals right now, and that will be a massive concern when you're going in to face a team who just can't seem to stop scoring goals. And that matchup between Haaland and Holding on Wednesday night is going to be an interesting one to see, because on current form, Haaland is absolutely firing on all cylinders, and I would say Rob Holding's confidence is very, very delicate. So I don't see Man City not winning that game. I think they're just rolling from game to game now. There's so much confidence in that squad. It doesn't matter who they go up against. They seem to be beating them, whether it be Bayern Munich, whether it be Sheffield United in the FA Cup. The approach is always the same. The professionalism is always the same. And they've hit one of these streaks of form where it doesn't really matter who they're playing against. They just seem like they're going to win.
Yeah, Anthony, I think that's the sort of thing that's looming large here, probably even for Arsenal. It's just this just how imposing Manchester City are. Like, I mean, City wobbled a little bit earlier in the season, hence why they're this far back heading into this big game. Obviously, they have a couple of games in hand, but maybe if Arsenal were coming up against any other opponent in the title race, maybe they would be a little bit less nervous. But the fact there's Haaland scoring goals, City have this experience of winning titles over the last wee while, and they're just both tactically and technically just top of the tree. And maybe that might actually affect them.
Well, this is what City have done to the league. Like Arsenal, if you just look at it in isolation, they are 5 points clear at the top of the table, and they've still to play Manchester City. But there seems to be among a lot of the Arsenal fan base this resignation that it's gone, it's over, because Manchester City are this unbelievable juggernaut. And we've watched Liverpool get 99 points, I think, 98, 99 points and not win the league. And it does seem like sometimes Arsenal remind me a little bit of Liverpool in 2013, 2014, when it was very emotional. The whole thing was really emotional. And I don't know if you can win a league like that when you're driven by emotion. You actually kind of have to be robotic. Like Manchester City are robotic. And by the way, we're only going into the run-in now. This is the run-in, the last 7 or 8 games. We've heard this about in February, we're in the title race, and that's what happens. Arsenal can't control that. That's a media thing where everything's hyped up and every match is hyped up. But realistically, this is the run-in. And Arsenal do look, as Paul said, they look a little tired mentally. The pressure, it gets to you. It gets to you. And players who've been fantastic all season start to make uncharacteristic mistakes. Are picking up a couple of injuries. And City are just hitting their stride. They've been here before as well. And that's the thing that makes you think, at this point, maybe City can actually kick on and win this fairly comfortably. But then again, if Arsenal go and win at the Etihad, not impossible, not beyond them, they're 8 points clear. They're 8 points clear. So absolutely massive game. Looking forward to it. It's huge. But I think, it kind of sense if City do win it, and they are also capable of just blowing Arsenal away, because they're capable of doing that to anybody. Then they could wrap this up with a game or two to spare. There is that kind of feeling about it.
Yeah, and David, you've been there in terms of title races, especially in that era when your Dundalk team would have been coming up against Cork City. And it was interesting, it was just before the Southampton game, they were doing a segment on Sky with Aaron Ramsdale where he went to, he was at a charity that just involves dogs, which is something like he's very interested in. But they asked him about, the sense of tension, because he's been at the other end in terms of battling against relegation, and now he's experiencing a title race for the first time. And he said, he felt more tension when it came to a relegation battle than he does in a title race. Didn't really come across in the first 5 minutes against Southampton, in fairness, given it was his pass that sort of led to the problems at the back. But in your experience, does that sense of tension kind of creep in at this point of the season as you get towards those kind of last 5 or 6 games?
Yeah, I think Arsenal have obviously been on top for so long, and but yet there's the main pundits out there on Sky are still predicting Man City are going to win. And when you just know what a juggernaut Man City can be, I think that obviously puts doubts in Arsenal's mind. The funny bit about that game, obviously I didn't get to see it being on RT on Friday, but watching the highlights back, I kind of had to flick and think, what a terrible 2 points drop by Southampton. Like a team who are a win would have been absolutely massive for them, really giving them a real hope of survival. and every bit of talk was about how it had affected Arsenal. In fairness to Arsenal, being 3-1 down, to come back and nick the point might end up being absolutely huge. But from Southampton's end to have been ahead, 3-1 with 2 minutes left on the clock and out of time, and to end up only getting a point, I can't imagine how devastated they would have been. What a big win it would have been for them, and a chance to survive. Obviously they still can, but that certainly didn't help. But from Arsenal's perspective going into it, I think they've, it's been mentioned now, the wheels have fallen off and all of that. And I think that, again, it's just, they're still 5 points ahead, but because Man City are just so good, everybody predicts they're going to win every game between now and the end of the season. And the same run in with Liverpool a couple of years ago, that's exactly what they did. You just can't see them dropping points. But Arsenal by no way out of it. They've got to just regroup, and they could still go to the Etihad and lose the game and still win the title. So they've just got to try and get their form back, start winning games, and they can still score goals. They've shown that in those last 3 games that they've drawn, they've still scored a lot of goals. So as Paul said, they've got to tighten it up at the back. And I'd be interested to see if it is Rob Holding that plays over the next couple of weeks, or whether maybe Kieran Tierney comes in and maybe plays the centre half position or something. But they're definitely lacking options there and lacking depth. So, but yeah, it makes for a really intriguing, last 6 or 7 games in the Premier League.
Yeah, and I think we can be maybe forgiven for looking at teams in terms of them being a hive mind. So you talk about the confidence of a certain team like Arsenal or Man City being a juggernaut, but there's all these different personalities within the team, and obviously there's leaders, there's maybe others who are not. And then also, as I think we've said, you can be in danger of looking at what the other team is doing. And I wonder, in your time, were you looking at Cork City's results or even paying much attention, or was it actually better to sort of just almost kind of have a blinkered view and just be almost fully focused on what you yourselves were doing in those particular title battles?
Yeah, I think you're first and foremost, you're just fully focused on your own games and making sure you're winning. I remember even in 2014, I'd actually picked up an injury, so I missed the run in. But I think we dropped points in 2 of our last 3 games to actually hand the opportunity over to Cork to win the title. And we were lucky we played them on the last day. And I think we went in a point behind. And but you obviously have one eye on the results. You know that if you have to keep winning, but if your opposition is dropping points, that's all the better. So yeah, you're always mindful of other teams' results. That goes throughout the season. I mean, first thing most players do when they finish a game is go in and see what other results happened around the league. And if someone's going to be your title challenge, you're always happy to see them dropping points.
Yeah, I suppose a final point, Paul, in regards to, say, if Arsenal do what is being built up as being the impossible of going to the Etihad and beating Manchester City and then going 8 points clear, albeit with City having 2 games in hand. There is still, I suppose, when you look at Arsenal's form overall, and as you said, defensively they're leaking goals, which you can't really be doing at this stage of a season if you're going for a title. And they still have to play like Newcastle United away. We saw what Newcastle did to Spurs on Sunday. There is a real possibility that they could beat City and then still drop enough points that City come back and hit them towards the end.
That would be the concern, that if you take the City game kind of in isolation out of it, there's probably opportunities there that they could drop points. I mean, they have to play Chelsea in a London derby, and then they have to play Newcastle away, and then Brighton at home. And Brighton are absolutely flying. I thought they were really unlucky against Manchester United yesterday, and their performances have been really good over the last number of weeks. I saw them against Tottenham, and they were very unlucky to lose that game as well. So there's still difficult games for Arsenal to play, and then they finish off against 2 teams who could well be involved in a relegation scrap in Nottingham Forest and Wolves. So it's not a foregone conclusion that once you go past Man City that Arsenal are going to pick up maximum points on kind of current performances and some of the weaknesses or maybe drops in confidence that we've seen in the squad. There are opportunities for Arsenal to drop more points after Wednesday night. But listen, we could say the same about Manchester City as well. They've got a huge number of games to juggle. I fully believe that the Champions League is the focus within that squad, and they've got a really difficult doubleheader against Real Madrid to contend with as well. And yes, they have a superb squad, but it could take one bad performance or to get knocked out of the Champions League that could really maybe shake that squad up, and maybe that would distract them from the Premier League as well. So yeah, it's all indicators, Raf, at this moment in time are pointing towards a Man City treble. They just look that good. But we'll wait and see, kind of take it game by game. But if Arsenal were to lose Wednesday night, I just think that would absolutely shatter the confidence of that squad, and combine it with the 3 games that they've played previously, it would be a hard one to come back from.
Yeah, but even with that, I suppose, Anthony, I suppose it's the psychology of it, where you have something that appears to be in your hand and then it sort of disappears. But overall, if you were to start the season, you wouldn't think Arsenal were going to be title challengers, yet here they are. So it is a good season for them overall, even though it probably won't feel like that just because of the way it's actually going to pan out, or not going to pan out. I'm not predicting the future, how it could pan out, I should say.
Well, it is, of course, and it doesn't have to be the end, you know, if they don't win this league, because the age profile of their squad is really good. They've got so many excellent young footballers. They have a good coach, a good young coach, Arteta. You know, this is his first job. He's a rookie manager, really. So he's improving as well all the time. And if nothing else, you know, it's a major learning curve for them. Even if they don't win the league, it's a great experience to actually go through this and everything that comes with it. You know, I just think that, like, I think this is the run in, as I said, like, what is it, 7 games they have left? So, you know, talk of like title races in December, January, February, it must be very exhausting for a team like Arsenal. Just and I think even when you see them, how they've celebrated certain victories, and, you know, the fan bases, they haven't won the league in 20 years, is it something like that? Or
19 at the moment, yeah.
19
not since the Invincibles.
So obviously desperate, you know, again, similarities to Liverpool. You kind of have to be a little colder, I think, and just to see, you know, as Paul said, they're so good. Like, they've been there, they've done it, they've done all this before. None of this is new to them. But no, absolutely, Rafa. Like, if Arsenal finished second, I think there was this debate before, who would have had the better season if Manchester United finished third and win the Carabao Cup. Would they have had a better season than Arsenal if Arsenal finished second? But, you know, Arsenal are in a title race. You know, this stands to you. So there's no, why can't they come back next year and maybe go one step further? It doesn't have to be this is their only chance. It's not like, again, Liverpool in 2014, they knew Suarez was going that season. So there was the sense that this was a one-off, which it proved. Not so much with Arsenal. You know, there's no reason why they can't hang on to those players. Maybe add again in the summer and give it another lash next year.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that pans out on Wednesday night anyway, between City and Arsenal. And as I said earlier, we do have a live match on RT2 and RT Player, but it's next Monday and it's Derry City against Shamrock Rovers. But all that is to come. But David and Paul, thanks a million for taking the time today, and Anthony Pyne as well.
Thanks, Rob.